the Jaipur BookMark reflects the core values of the publishing industry, and it brings together some of the greatest publishing professionals from around the world.
जयपुर बुकमार्क एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है जहाँ पे कि बिजनेस को समझने का एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलता है. सो आई थिंक JBM इज समथिंग विच इज़ फैंटास्टिक एंड पीपल हु डोंट नो अबाउट इट, उनको आना चाहिए, उनको इसका हिस्सा बनना चाहिए.
Jaipur BookMark. Come and celebrate literature, meet authors, agents, publishers. Join us at the Jaipur BookMark.
On behalf of Jaipur BookMark, Festival Advisors, Aditi Maheshwari Goyal, Namita Gokhale, Naveen Kishore, Neeta Gupta, and Urvashi Batalia, Festival producer Sanjay K. Roy, and everyone at Team Arts, we welcome you to the 8th edition of the Jaipur BookMark. In 2020, the world grappled with the pandemic and businesses learned to reinvent themselves and adapt to an entirely new digital idiom. JBM 2021 is being held as a virtual event and, as always, continues to bring together all stakeholders of the business of books over meaningful discussions and far-reaching resolutions. Jaipur BookMark has hosted a Festival Directors Roundtable every year for the past 4 years, where over 100 festival directors from around 27 countries exchange ideas on how festivals continue to forefront the fight for freedom of expression and ideas. They share their stories, challenges, learnings in the fight to protect this much needed space. A warm welcome to this Festival Directors Roundtable at the virtual JBM 2021. How do competing tensions and power structures exert pressure on festivals and their programming? Joanne Concannon, Maria Sheila Kremeski, Natasha Lamori, Rashmi Ranjan Parida, and Ravi DC in conversation with Sanjoy K. Roy. In today's polarized world, should festivals reflect the polarization of our times? Should festival platforms be agnostic to political beliefs or leanings, or should they try and make an effort to present a balanced view as much as possible? Festival heads address and discuss this ongoing debate which impacts the essence of every program. Joanne Concannon is a Director of External Relations at University of York, responsible for global student recruitment, communications, marketing, and philanthropy. She is also Director of York Festival of Ideas, a large free festival dedicated to demonstrating the societal value of education, research, and ideas to diverse audiences. Maria Sheila Kremeski is Director, Hay Festival, Segovia. She created the Café Mozart, emblematic theater of the 80s and 90s in Buenos Aires. She has received several international distinctions, including Young Talents Distinction of the City of Buenos Aires, the Award for Media Impact of the International Press Club of Madrid in 2008. In 2013, she was appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire by Her Majesty, the Queen Elizabeth II. In 2015, King Philippe VI awarded her the Cross of Isabel la Católica. Natasha Lamori is the Director of the Writers' House of Tbilisi, Georgia. The Writers' House of Georgia manages a writers' residency program and organizes the Tbilisi International Festival of Literature, as well as a vast branch of translation activities, and represents Georgia in international book fairs. Rashmi Ranjan Parida is a social entrepreneur, journalist, curator. He's the founder of Kalinga Literary Festival, Mystic India Festival, Mystic Kalinga Festival, Kandhamal Literary Festival, Living Legend Oration, Odisha Living Legend Awards. He's also the founder and director of Rhythm Festival Private Limited, Odisha Media Info Service Private Limited, and the Odisha Dairy Foundation. Ravi DC is the publisher and managing editor of DC Books, one of the top 5 literary publishing houses in India and the leading publisher in Malayalam. He's also the managing director of Current Books Private Limited, one of the largest bookshop chains in India. He's the secretary of DC Kidakhamudi Foundation, a trust that promotes culture and education. He is the chief facilitator of the DC School of Management and Technology and the chief facilitator of the Kerala Literature Festival. Sonjoy K. Roy, an entrepreneur of the arts, is the managing director of Teamwork Arts, which produces over 33 acclaimed performing arts, visual arts, and literary festivals across 40 cities across the world, including the Jaipur Literature Festival. He's a founding trustee of Salam Balak Trust, providing support services for street and working children in Delhi. Roy works closely with various industry bodies and the government on policy issues in the cultural sector in India, and has lectured and collaborated with international universities. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you how do competing tensions and power structures exert pressure on festivals and their programming. Sonjoy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rima, and welcome to all our wonderful panelists from literally across the world. What better way to talk about the conflicts that we all as festival producers and directors face on a daily basis. This is our real world. Out there, everything seems smooth and fantastic apart from not being able to mute or unmute each other. But underneath all of this, continuously is this flux of the pulls and pressures, which is something that we're going to discuss today. I'm going to start straight with Sheila, all the way from Segovia in Spain. Sheila, I hope you've been safe, and many congratulations for your most recent award. I mean, very soon you'll have one apartment just for the awards that you have. And of course, for those of you who don't know, Sheila's apartment is just a stone's throw away from all of the wonderful museums in Madrid. Sheila, I'm going to go straight to you because you've, in many ways, Hay Festival Segovia, you have set it up and you have been running it. And yet, even internally, you've still had the conflict and the pulls and pressures because you're part of the Hay Festival network. Tell us how you've managed that, and especially in more recent times when the big controversy erupted in UAE just before your festival. How did you manage to be able to continue doing what you were doing and taking it to the next level?
Well, allow me first to tell you a picture of Spain at this time and how it affects the financing of the festival from public and private money. You know, by the Constitution of 1978, Spain is a very new republic. A new democracy, representative democracy. It's a parliamentary monarchy with freedom, religion, and worship. The breakdown of partisanship, the appearance of the new party, the populism of the left and the right, and the growing anger in the political speech, the fake news, the public opinion divide into extremes. They reflect a decade of economic crisis, corruption case, the pandemic. We have in Spain a setback in public financing the culture to the 45 less than before the crisis started in 2008. And also the decentralization of the money for culture. It means the local and the regional administration have mostly support the public money for culture. This is why we have to, in Segovia, Spain, we have to deal with 3 different administrations, 3 different political parties. And, also the company and the publishing house are part of this polarization. In the other hand, the family or domestic money has spending, have sacrificed the spending on culture. In this panorama, also, we had a face-to-face festival last year. This was organized with follow all the COVID pandemic protocol. What does it mean? That the income from ticket sale was reduced because the capacity of the venue have to be reduced to the third of the capacity. What does it mean all this panorama? That we have, in order to continue to be a festival, a neutral festival, democratic platform for 16 years, we have to build bridge all the time to continue to be independent, to be plural and coexistent with the harmony political force that financially support the festival. For example, one of the strategies that work very well is I focus with the Financial Times on Europe. What we do, we invited every single Eurodeputate of the different party to join in a conversation on Europe. The result was very interesting because they tried, because the political speech in Spain are began anger. So the polarization is going through the citizen as well. So we are living a quite difficult time. And I think every effort we can do to build bridge is very good.
Sheila, hold that thought about the anger and the polarization. Let me come to Ravi DC. Ravi, you've got elections coming up in your state very shortly, and of course it's polarized like most other parts of the world, and of course India. How does that affect? And Kerala being the most literal state in the country, in the most well-read state, but very firmly divided. How does that impact you when you're programming? Do you have to balance that and sort of give equal opportunity or a platform for both left and right to be there? Or are you sort of happy to forget all of the politics of it and program what you feel is best?
Sanjay, I think last year when we had the festival, actually, that's in 2020 January, the Chief Minister was a part of the program actually for the initial inaugural program. And he has said, this is a space for anybody to talk about anything. You can criticize the left, you can criticize the government. And that has been, I mean, in fact, one of the good things happened with the Kerala Literature Festival is, but 10 days back, they have inaugurated the permanent space for KLF by the government of Kerala, actually. They have spent about 70 million rupees, actually, for building a permanent space called the Kerala space. And they said, and while inaugurating and dedicating it to the KLF, what he has said is actually it's a place for free thought, actually, for the people to discuss anything and everything. So it's a bit different from other parts, actually. Having said that, we have had enough issues with the ruling front in the central government as well as some of the other people actually, intervening a couple of years back. We have not had actually a lot of criticism or even the government actually interfering in anything within from the state or the local level as such. And there has been a lot of things, like, for example, we had some of these radical Maoist kind of groups actually coming for the event and actually, planning a lot of things and internally for their own thing. So there has been a lot of groups actually coming as as the audience or for the event actually. And it has been, KLF has been in the limelight for a lot of radical groups actually coming and having their participation as public. So that has been going into the extreme, the other side otherwise. But government, when we talk to the government, they said these are not our concern actually, which police have to deal with it, and we don't have to worry about it. So I think it's quite free, and government doesn't interfere, and we could discuss on anything and everything actually what's happening. So which is a rare thing actually right now, especially in
Thanks,
India.
Ravi. Let me go to Joan. Joan, in many ways, you're sort of unlike the rest of the representatives here, perhaps barring Natasha. You're sort of, in some ways, a bubble. The York Festival of Ideas sits within, of course, the university setup. But I'm sure you too have to deal with the continuous polarized form, whether it's Brexit, whether it's Scotland and England, the issues, and especially in recent times where politics has become a whole new world. I mean, a decade ago, I'm sure the festival would have had a different kind of character because politics hadn't still come to play a role in the way that it has done now in the United Kingdom. So tell us a little bit about your pulls and pressures and how you manage to be able to, even within the university setup, which of course it's challenging at many points. How do you manage to sort of deal and keep the ship sort of steered in the right direction?
So interestingly, your point about the festival was set up, this is our 10th anniversary, at a point where in the UK, tuition fees were about to be trebled. So there were a number of reasons why we set the festival up as non-branded from the university. And the first of which was really that recognition already 10 years ago that a combination of austerity and some significant questions around value for money in terms of universities in the UK meant we deliberately set up a festival that was aiming to reach diverse audiences who don't typically engage with universities. So that's why it's independently branded the York Festival of Ideas. It's certainly true that the last 10 years have provided extremely rich pickings for program development. So issues like polarisation, we did a whole day where we managed to combine both sides of the Brexit debate, as it were, bringing together people from Leave and Remain. And we managed to do that programme in a way that was very much the university facilitating open debate and discussion. And I would argue that while we're unusual in the context of being a festival that's led and run and founded by a university, it's very much anchored to our particular interests as the University of York. Our founders set up the university with a very firm belief on the interdependency between education and social purpose and public benefit. So the festival allows us to engage with really significant partnership networks. We don't program everything ourselves. We work with about 100 organizations, many of whom are external to the city, let alone the university, to look at those really complex issues. And I suppose my overarching aim in programming is to let people tell their own stories. Very often universities have a tendency to behave like Moses coming down from the mountain, where we've not only identified the problem, we've also identified the solution without actually asking anybody if that's the right problem or the right solution. So our aim in working with so many partners is to allow their voices. So we work with small charities, we work with major museums, we're now working with Jaipur, and it's really fascinating having that kind of melting pot of ideas in terms of our program curation. So one of our key aims is to address really complex issues like polarization and populism, but to do it in the context of trying to ensure as much as possible that there's a balance of views, because we see our role as a university in using a festival to bring different voices and experiences together. And one of the most fascinating days we did was looking at the impacts of austerity by working with housing associations, working with women in poverty, working with children who had emerged from the care home sector, and letting them tell their stories. And I thought that was one of the most fascinating and also enriching days. But the audience feedback was very much that they'd never heard those kinds of people talk on a festival platform. And the absolute overriding thing for us is that the festival is free. We want no barriers. We are a university that believes in having an open campus. So we want to engage the most diverse audiences. So putting any financial barrier in place automatically disables some audiences from engaging. And we get a very wide socioeconomic mix. But we also have a very firm belief that we shouldn't just sit back and wait for an audience to come to us. We look at taking things to where hard to reach audiences are. So we work with schools and other organizations where we will take an event to where they are, rather than assuming that they will come to us. Because in the UK, at least, universities can be seen as quite exclusive and exclusionary. And so very much our view is we need to go to where the audiences are that we want to engage with, rather than just waiting for them to come to us. But, you know, it's a programming challenge, but it's also a programming opportunity to bring people with very different experiences together. And as long as you set the parameters of respectful open debate, it can be really fascinating. And sometimes you can even change people's minds.
Parameters for respectful debate. Rashmi Ranjan, in Kalinga, you have a similar experience because you're also part of the university, the Kalinga University, and you've got this whole array of programming that you've been able to do. But even in faraway Orissa now, you are being faced by all of these conflicting different viewpoints, a viewpoint of the local state government, a viewpoint of the central state government, which is in some ways opposed to the sense of Orissa. But a lot of what you've done is really brought the voice of Oriya language and the Oriya people to the fore. So tell us a little bit about how you balance these contradictions of one aspiring to be a festival which addresses, you know, a larger world, but also so rooted in your own reality and in your own language and home state.
Yeah, sir, Kalinga Literature Festival is 8 years old festival, and it is basically we aims that the national festival should emerge from Orissa. Oriya language is also a classical language. We have to balance between Oriya language and national language and other languages, other Indian languages. So that is also, we try to balance between all these languages and also reserve some session for Oriya, our Oriya languages. And Odisha is also located in east part of India. There is a problem to bring the Hindi and English speakers, and but that is also we established ourselves in last 8 years. So slowly we are getting all these peoples, but sometimes also people complaining why you are bringing Hindi people, Hindi language people, many Hindi language people, English language people, why not Odia? But we aspiring that if we meet each other, we exchange our ideas, then we can also grow. So that's why we are focusing on balancing with all literature and languages in these 8 years.
Thank you, Rashmi Ranjan. Natasha, Rashmi talked about balancing between languages. You, of course, are in the heart of Europe, and you have a whole plethora of languages that surround you, and of course, you are part of, not just in the festival that you do at Tbilisi, but also in the House of Literatures, etc. How do you manage that? And do you try and find a balance, or how do you manage year on year to be able to keep it exciting and challenging and yet representative of what you stand for in Georgia and Tbilisi? Natasha, you're on mute.
I would like to welcome everyone. Thank you. I wish I was there in Jaipur, because last year's festival, it was an unforgettable experience for me. As for the literature festival and literature processes back here, we are a writer's house that is a state, basically it's a state-run establishment, because we belong to, so we operate under the Ministry of Culture. Notwithstanding this, I can state that we enjoy an enormous freedom of planning and having the activities we stand for. So there is no pressure from above, which is of course a great thing, especially in Georgia, where we are still struggling to become a young democracy. And for the festival, I would say that it has been a 6th year. We are the ones who started the literature festival in Georgia, and we enjoy being not only the one in the country, but also in the whole region, in the Caucasus region. We are the main literature festival, and of course we make use of it and invite very often, not to all of our editions, writers from Azerbaijan and Armenia, and we try to be the festival for balance and neutrality, where both authors from these countries have a equal say, and we always group them together. So it's always an interesting event to follow. Otherwise, we also stand for freedom of expression, I would say, because again, we are very much intertwined with political issues. Georgia there's never an independent thing, without being very much into politics. So we have had, we have given our platform to many authors that, for example, have been exiled from their countries. In this case, again, I have to mention Azerbaijan, where we had several authors who are now living in Europe because they had to run to be in exile from their countries, or we have given floor to even Georgian writers who have not been able to come for a long time back to Georgia. And also we use our festival platform for publicity. Many guests that have come to Georgia may have not known much about it, may have not known about even the creeping occupation that we have every day from Russia, even today. So when they go back home, I think they go back as ambassadors of Georgia, telling our story. So for us, this is very important, and we use all these three tools for in our festival, alongside, of course, good literature.
I love the fact that they go back as ambassadors, which is basically what happens here, as you know, in Jaipur as well. But Sheila, I'm going to come back to you again. Segovia, very close to Basque country. Look at what's happening in Catalonia. Do literature festivals, is there a responsibility of a festival, a literature festival, to represent all of these conflicts? Do we have a responsibility to do so? Or should we steer clear of controversy and only program stuff that's non-controversial?
Well, as I told you, the polarization here is so extreme that also the public opinion, the audience is polarized. So I think we must contribute to bridge, to create a bridge. Of course, no extreme, no the populist of left and the populist of right, but try to help the center of the audience. So I think, yes, we have to be neutral, but also inclusive, without, of course, lose the independence of the decision of who we are invited. But yes, I think we must try to contribute to this, because the festival is a non-profit organization, Spanish non-profit. So we survive with the financing of the real world.
Neutral and inclusive. Joan, I think the most exciting thing and that's the reason, as you know, I've always been so excited about partnering with the York Festival of Ideas, is that you actually program both arts and sciences and don't necessarily make a divide between the two. Yet we know that while even 300 years ago, this was seen as the knowledge space, so all of this used to come into philosophy in the larger context. The last 2 centuries has seen a very divisive divide sort of between the arts and the sciences. Tell us about how you're able to bring these two together and the advantages of something like that.
So I'm very lucky that I work for a mid-sized university that has, since it was founded in 1963, had an ethos of interdisciplinarity, as in, I mean, literally the physical construct of the campus was created to allow scientists, artists, writers to mix and congregate together. We don't have a geography where all the sciences are in one part of the campus and all the artists are somewhere else. So it's a very porous environment. So in thinking about, therefore, the programming content and the complexity of the issues that we frequently address in that programming, I think it's absolutely vital to bring that diversity of experiences. I have a vivid memory of one of our scientists talking about a technical innovation that she was working with a farming community to deliver, but realizing after 6 months nobody was using this amazing innovation simply because they had forgotten to think about what the human interactions would be and the kind of the communications and the softer aspects of understanding the social conditions through which she could persuade these people to take on board a technical innovation that was going to save them huge amounts of time, but also deliver much better crops. And so we try to, when we address issues like climate change, we look at the behavioral conditions as much as we look at the science. And also, I think, in conveying that sense of complexity to audiences, it perhaps goes to the heart of one of the aspects of polarization, and particularly populism, that seems to have grabbed public attention is the idea that something is very simple, that you can come up with a slogan or you can come up with an easy fix. None of these things are easy. So I think the more we can program interdisciplinarity, bringing artists and scientists and writers and poets together, we can try to facilitate a conversation that shows actually climate change or populism or the impacts of poverty and inequality or health and well-being or mental health. These are all very complex, very difficult issues to solve. And you're not going to solve them just by coming up with some kind of silver bullet, because if there is one, I don't think anyone's found it. So that really goes to the heart of, but it feels entirely comfortable for us because we are that kind of university. Climate change, we have something like 150 people who range from political scientists to sociologists to fundamental scientists working together on different aspects of environmental sustainability. So it's very natural for us to therefore program that kind of ethos into the festival, and the choice of our external program partners is very much mirrored in that we don't think we've got all the solutions as one university either.
Facilitating programs and conversations and debate. Rashmi Ranjan, you talked about this a little while ago. You talked about the language wars in terms of a lot of people ask you, why do you bring in Hindi writers or English writers, etc.
Yeah.
But it's really this that enriches the program.
Yeah.
But what is the kind of issues that you have to deal with locally where the sense of patriotism to a language or to a sense of a place sort of overrides this larger thought of the more you include, the more richer you will be because you're opening yourselves out. Especially during COVID, we have seen that many states and cities and buildings and communities and villages sort of started shutting down and not letting people and ideas in. Do you think that this is some of the stuff that you've been tackling at the Kalinga University and, of course, at the festival, at the Kalinga Festival?
Sir, during COVID, we started a online program inspiring from JLF. We started KLF Bhap Samvad. Till now, we covered 150 sessions. We tie up with all the publishers like Penguin, Rupa, HarperCollins, Westland, all these people, and also with Odia writers, Odia Publishing House. It also covered, it is very interactive, and all these people are from our state. Also, it is a blessing for us that we, from a regional to, we portrayed in national canvas, because many national like Amitabh Ghosh, Amish Tripathi, all these people are joined during COVID in our online session. So people slowly convert to online hybrid type of things. They slowly accepted KLF in online and national level, and people also slowly accept all the languages in that platform. Slowly English, Hindi, even Maithili language, in Bengali, and also Odia. We covered all the, even tribal languages in Kandhamal. We dedicated a session on tribal languages in Kandhamal during the month of May. Slowly people accepting in these online things. And also we have many outreach programs to customize the geographical needs of that particular region. Like we have a program in Kandhamal that is tribal belt. That is, we specially focused on tribal literature. That program basically focused on tribal. And another program is some KLF Corner. Every month we are doing it in Oxford Bookstore. We invited a local writers to do a session. So we slowly diversify ourselves, also explore new things, and people also accepting this type of things during this COVID and pandemic
So in
time.
many ways, the digital space has actually helped you
Yes,
make
yes,
that
yes.
breakthrough
Yes,
between
yes.
languages and make it more acceptable. Ravi,
Yes.
the digital space has made you sort of be allowed to be accessed by many more people. In Kerala, you've always had incredible satire and a biting criticism. Do you feel that, especially in today's milieu, that the minute you tweet something or the minute you say something on a public platform, you have FIRs being filed against you in a different state because of the different mindset? So, is this digital space that we are now occupying, has that sort of impacted you and the kind of programming that you're doing? Are you being more careful given what's happened over the last few months, if not years?
Yes, I mean, we have been doing quite a lot of program. Over the virtual space actually, and we have been a bit careful actually with some of the things what we have been doing actually in the digital space actually, because I have seen many cases happening left, right, and center. But having said that, some of the political things which is happening right now, we have not got into those areas because it's not a physical space, because kind of interactions happen on such things is actually in a physical space actually. So we thought it may not add much value when you talk over the digital space. Second is actually the kind of people who will probably join these kind of sessions are the people who are quite vicious and they just want to make an issue of it, and it usually doesn't go in the right direction actually. For example, on the 6th of March actually, we have a physical session actually of KLF. KLF is not happening this year actually, other than being one or two programs a month in Code Beach itself actually, which will be both. It's in a hybrid model. Both Arundhati is going to be the first person actually, which she'll be there on the 6th actually in Calicut to do the KLF, which will be a hybrid session as well, followed by Robila Thapur actually by the end of the month. So what we do is actually, even when we discuss these kind of things, actually we get into a physical space, and we have not found that digital space as a major forum to make a difference actually right now with all the kind of reach it has. And as far as we are concerned, actually, KLF or the Kerala Literature Festival has also one other reason is actually, it's a people festival actually. There's quite a lot of people, and we use a Gujarati street for the poetry festival. We use the nearby, one of the places for actually cuisine and the food festival actually, or there's a lot of things happening. So, digital has not been our core area due to other reasons as well. It's not political actually, but you don't get the right. There's a huge crowd from the other side, whoever is on the opposition actually, it gets into and make nasty comments actually. You said it right actually. It's a bit satirical actually on one part. Second part is actually quite vicious from the opposition actually, whoever doesn't like what's been discussed on actually. But in a physical forum, it makes all the difference actually. There are people to probably argue and fight as well actually.
Natasha, Ravi's been talking about how being on the ground in many ways has been safer for them than being in the digital space. But in Georgia, and you continue to have to wrestle with your larger neighbor, Russia, around the corner. You talked about how people come to your festival and go away as the ambassador to Georgia. We know that literature and the arts, while they're able to make a huge impact on people, they're still a soft target. And it's very easy for governments, for people who don't necessarily support inclusivity, to attack the very idea of trying to be inclusive and trying to accommodate diversity. How have you been able to tackle some of these pressures in the festival and, of course, in the House of Literature?
In Georgia, it has been true for years that writers, especially poets, writers, they are the main opinion makers in the country. Everyone adores poets and writers, and they have, of course, have always had the biggest audience. So that's why they are very powerful, and in their hands there is a big power affecting people. Is also meaning not only meaning also in some of the political matters. So last year we had an idea to take our guests of the festival, but that festival happened unfortunately digitally, to take to the border. It's some 60 kilometers from Tbilisi. It's a close drive where the occupation forces stand even today without any legal right to do so, and to have a literature event there on the border of the occupied territory, so that back when, as I said, our ambassadors go back to their countries, they would tell about it. So in our case, when so much violation of human rights appear, the main force, literature, comes on the scene. And so we've been using this force for centuries now, and we keep on doing this actually successfully. So I think that in this case, the Literature Festival, as well as the Writers' House itself, is a unique opportunity, presents at least unique opportunity, not only for the Georgian writers, but also for everyone who needs this scene to speak out. I think I've answered your question.
Yeah, a unique opportunity and speaking out. Joan, what is the conflict? I mean, many of us have a personal and, of course, a professional life. The personal may be mired in controversy and in all kinds of issues, and many of the books that we today present have reflections of that. Whether it's somebody who's been a murderer, who's been a scamster, or has been abusive, etc. When you program, is there, as literature platforms, do we have to take cognizance of their personal lives, or do we take cognizance of their work as professional writers?
And I suppose I would go back to that framing thing that I talked about at the beginning in terms of that respect and toleration piece. In the UK, at least, there are various legislative frameworks that any festival also has to adhere to. So I think it would literally depend, but we are always interested in unusual. We are quite an eclectic festival because we span all of the disciplines. So we take everything on its merit, working with publishing houses, and quite often we don't do back-to-back standalone events. Quite often when something is very complex, we seek that diversity by developing panel discussions, as opposed to giving somebody just a platform to present just their view. What we do is look at creating sessions that provide that kind of diversity of experience, where somebody can be challenged. And a really good example of that was we did a whole day a couple of years ago around the challenges of finding peace in the Middle East. And we had people from a range of countries who were giving very different perspectives. And again, it's that kind of setting out the parameters of how you want to develop a day, where you are conveying that sense of complexity. One of the other things that we do a lot is to allow our audience to interact with panel. It's more difficult to do that in digital environments, or it's less It's less opportunistic to some degree, but it does give people the chance to challenge. So when you have people who are perhaps representing governments who are not necessarily aligned to somebody else's view on what a human rights agenda might look like, giving the audience itself the opportunity to challenge respectfully, but really quite, in quite a punchy way. It's up to them to be able to defend their position or not, as the case may be. So I think as much as possible, we need to be courageous about creating spaces that allow that diversity of opinion, because otherwise, and it's perhaps facilitated and fueled by social media platforms, all we end up doing is creating our own mini echo chambers and never accepting anybody else's viewpoint. And universities in the UK are really at the intersection now of what various parts of the media are referring to as culture wars. And I think the only way to navigate our way out of this idea that we're either left or right or centre is to provide as much opportunity to bring different voices and experiences together. Otherwise, if you don't talk to people who have an opposing opinion, how are you ever going to reach a point where you might agree on something?
I'm going to add this question to your response, Joan, and I'm going to open it to both you and Sheila. So Sumit Agarwal asks, what would political polarization have to do with a literature festival at all? How does a political opinion or inclination affect the flow of knowledge and information, which is supposed to be unbiased and uncensored? And I think, he's highlighted supposed to be unbiased and uncensored. But can literature at all be unbiased? And does it need to be censored, or can it be uncensored? This is to both of you.
Sheila, do you want to go first?
John, go ahead. I think Sheila will follow with you.
I think Sheila's frozen. Perhaps we're not a standard literature festival. In fact, we actually run not very much fiction unless they're very big name authors. So the kind of issues that we address inevitably have some kind of relationship with political controversy. And I think as long as you accept that opportunity to provide balanced opinion and to allow audiences to engage and to question, then I think as a university, our founding motto is on the threshold of wisdom. There is always something new to learn. We want to engage with different audiences around the world. That feels to me absolutely the driving force of what kind of university we are, and therefore it influences and shapes how we make programming decisions in the context of the festival. I think we have to be courageous, because otherwise you end up only talking to people you already engage with. And again, one of the reasons why it's not the University of York Festival of Ideas is I could have happily done that, and I would only ever get the people who'd come to every other event we hold on campus. And really, what's the point? In the UK context, that would be someone who's over 40, almost certainly white, and almost certainly middle class. By creating a festival that is free and working with so many external partners, we've got at least a fighting chance of saying we're not that kind of university. We want to engage with different audiences. We're passionate about the world of ideas, and we think everybody else should be too, and have the opportunity to ask questions that affect their daily lives.
Sheila, what would political polarization have to do with the literature festival?
Well, I share the opinion of Joan. When I'm programming, we don't have politician invited to the festival. What we do is to allow a diversity of opinion, allow different voices. That is. It's not they say do that or no. But I share Joan. The festival in Korea is not only a literature festival, it's also an idea festival. So every year we choose one a special issue to talk. For example, tolerance. And for example, tolerance, 2 years ago, we invited, for example, Ken Follett, from Ken Follett to any person who has to talk about tolerance, or Basque, or Catalonia, or whatever. Of course, I think if we can be aligned festival, we have to take into account what is going on in the society, really. We are not accepted any pressure of, I never received a call from a politician to say, invited my cousin. No? What we try to be is a real picture of what's going on in Spain. Because we are deeply democratic, of course, I don't want to invite the populists of extreme left and extreme right who rise now in Spain. That is, I will say, the red line for me. But then I try to show the diversity of the population. And also, because we also need to engage different audience. For example, when we started in Segovia 16 years ago, the film festival, there was 3 bookshops in Segovia. Now there are 13 bookshops. And what's more important, when you talk with the bookseller, they told you that there is enormous change in the taste from the population since the festival started. In the beginning, they read any books, and now they are open to buy international books, to buy different subjects that for example, we are very interested in have a green festival, a sustainability, because I think we must look after the new relation with the nature, to look after the nature. And it's incredible how, since the festival is, what person began to interest in different subjects that they never have before. So I share Joanne. I share
Yes.
Joanne.
I think you could boil it down to show, not tell.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference, and we've seen this across the world. The minute you start opening up, people will come perhaps for the known name, and then they stumble upon a section or a writer or a Michael Sandel or something about particle physics, which they otherwise would never go to. They would completely change their world. We have a few minutes left. I'm going to just put these 2 questions, short questions. Natasha Aruna Kumar asks, do the Lit Fest provide a platform for all points of view while scheduling the program?
Absolutely. We are very keen on this, and we, as I said, we always give the platform to different writers and different audiences. So in this case, we do not limit ourselves, and in our case, being a small country, we have so many issues to tackle, being in heart of Caucasus, again, as I mentioned. So it's all about freedom of speech in our case, freedom of expression, and we have had some very, very strong discussions. I want maybe to talk about one that was very important. We always try to include 2 or 3 panel discussions during our 5-day festival, and one of them was about the role of writer, whether or not he or she can afford to remain only a storyteller, just write fiction and nothing else, or be a full take all the responsibility on themselves to be someone who like someone like Svetlana Alexievich, who was actually one of our first guests in the residency, also to tell the story of their country and then to take it out and give it to the public, to a larger public. So I think these are the issues that we can come back every time, and it's a theme that can be of interest to all kind of audience and all kind of platform, literature platform.
Rashmi Ranjan, quick comment. Sanya asks, what about trolls? How do you deal with them? Why are festivals targeted for bringing in some speakers which some people might not like? Why do they end up trolling the festival? At the end of the day, literature festivals are all about the flow of knowledge.
Yes, yes, sir. Actually, we started this festival during our 30s, 10 years ago. Our main aim was to do a international festival in Bhubaneswar and the international literature festival in global map from Bhubaneswar. But we never ever compromise with content and speakers. But if some people don't like we invited Subramanian Swami and Manish Shankar Iyer in a session. Some people said he is anti-Hindu, some said he is Hindu. So many people troll us. So we usually avoid troll. We never ever care about troll, but we never ever compromise with our content, sir. We always give our importance to content and national importance.
Thank you. Ravi, last comment, the last question. Aruna asks, how does one see funding? Does funding help in creating a lit fest with its diverse culture? As sponsors may have issues with it themselves.
One good part about the KLF is actually when we started, we took a deliberate decision that we will not have an anchor or a title sponsor. Actually, that kind of helped actually. So we get a lot of philanthropists funding our literature festival. Actually, most of the funding come from philanthropists. Then some of the companies actually, and government also funds quite a bit actually. 1/4 of the funding comes from the government as well actually. From different departments of government. So I think they see it as something actually which is quite objective, and we don't have. I won't say agenda, but I would say we touch upon all the topics, and that's one area most of the people who fund supports us as such. And we have had controversies like the Mustache, that book which has created, the last JCB prize book actually, that we literally had about 400 cops actually during that time over there actually to support us actually by the government or by the police actually. It's not even the government actually, the police also supported us actually when such controversies happen. We had something on the Islam extremism, we had something on the Hindutva, all these actually when we had issues. We at one time last year we had to tell the governor of Kerala, so please don't come, because he was putting a lot of conditions to the Litfest actually. So we had to withdraw him from the literature festival as well. So we could do all of it actually. I'm so happy because
Well, as you can see, it all looks very comfortable and easy on the front end of it, but every festival has to sort of work the magic behind the scenes, create the balance, and make sure that we're really being able to put something together to advance knowledge and ideas and information. Joan Concannon, Sheila, Ravi DC, Natasha, Rashmi Ranjan, thank you all so much for being part of the Jaipur BookMark at the Jaipur Literature Festival today. Rima, over to you.
Thank you, Joan, Maria, Natasha, Rashmi, and Ravi for this insightful discussion. It was incredible to experience so many different aspects and stories. Thank you, Sanjay, for being fabulous as always. And a big thank you to all for being such a wonderful and attentive audience. All the Jaipur BookMark sessions will be available to view later on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Once again, we would like to thank all our advisors and partners for generously supporting us. We hope you all enjoyed this conversation and will stay tuned for our next session. Look Back in Hope, a conversation with independent feminist publishers, Susan Hawthorne, Colleen Hicks, Zoe Beck, Laurie Leroy, Lenny Goodings, and Margaret Busby in conversation with Urvashi Battaglia. Thank you once again. And now we present an interesting reading from the JBM Thoughts series.
Hello everyone. What an incredible time we've been going through, all of us, not just in India, but all across the world. And in the normal course of things, every year we would have congregated in Jaipur for the Jaipur Literature Festival around this time. And this time that's not possible, but it is wonderful to be able to reach out to everyone on this online platform. One thing that's stayed a constant through the very challenging times through the pandemic is that books have been our constant companions. And that, for me as a book lover and as a publisher, is terrific news. It's wonderful news. People turned to books in the time of the pandemic and in those first months of uncertainty, and then even later as we all got used to working off-site, working remotely, working in different circumstances. And books became a more integral part of our lives perhaps than ever before. As you know, in the first months when the lockdown was imposed in India, many bookshops were shut and access to books became something of a problem. But people were reading, even at that time, books that they already had. People turned to ebooks. And then as soon as bookshops opened up again, people started buying books. Sometimes the new books were not available. They started buying books that were on what is called the backlist. And then as the new books started coming out, we saw wonderful response. We've been seeing that for many months now to the new books from readers, from the book trade, from the media, from everyone in general. And it just reinforces our belief that books are just so very important to us. One of the things that the pandemic also did is that the availability mechanism, the delivery mechanism of books in India changed significantly. Books being delivered, physical books being delivered to your doorstep became very important because it was not always possible to go out and browse in bookshops. And books that were to be read on the online platform, that is ebooks, also more people started turning to ebooks. So that is another thing that has significantly changed. It doesn't come as a surprise that books are such an integral part of our lives, and in difficult times, in good times, in bad times, whenever. Because books, as we know, as any book lover will tell you, books make sense of the world around us, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. They help us make sense of the world that we live in, with information, with narrative, with stories. And sometimes they help us escape to another reality altogether when the reality that surrounds us becomes a little too difficult to deal with. So as a publisher, I have seen some wonderful new fiction and non-fiction being written, and that has come our way over the last year and more, some of which we'll be publishing from HarperCollins in the near future, including works by many very promising debut writers, both in fiction and non-fiction. Some of the writing is directly in response to and deals with the pandemic experience, which is not just one thing, but a whole spectrum of things. But I'm just clubbing it under pandemic experience. But not every book is deals directly with the pandemic experience. But I think all writing that's been done over the last year has been intrinsically impacted by the pandemic, and it's it reflects the writing that is now coming our way very directly reflects the marvel of the human creative process, which has it confronted the challenge of the times that we live in and has responded in its own ways. We are also seeing works, and very recently we published Amitav Ghosh's new book, Jangalnama. And in books like that, we are seeing integrally text and visual being fused in a way that they can no longer be separated. And I think that is something that we'll see more and more of. There are more books like that we are coming out with in the next few months. The whole text, audio, video experience are now, I don't think they're disparate silos anymore. And thanks to our experience with audiovisual platforms, which people have also been engaging with a lot over the pandemic period, I think we will see more works that actually integrate text, visual, and can then expand into the audio and video fields. People are also increasingly reading, and reading I use within quotes here. People are reading on multiple platforms. Print, of course, always traditional, and that's the most preferred format, but ebooks, audio, which is making its presence felt in India now, and also on multiple devices. I mean, the printed book you can think of as a device. The dedicated ebook reader is another device. A lot of people now read on smartphones. That's a device. For audiobooks, the streaming platform, and it is. As publishers, we look to make books available to as many readers as possible, as many consumers as possible, on all devices and platforms possible as simultaneously as possible. That is what we look to do. And we are seeing a great deal of interest and response in these areas. So I won't go on, but it has been a very interesting year, to put it mildly. And I think very interesting times lie ahead. We don't know what the future holds, but I think we can safely say that there are a lot of really good books to look forward to, and that books will continue to be an absolutely integral part of our lives in the time going forward. Thank you.